so there is a discipline, and that is something that we're purposely trying to do. Like, we want to be known as the company that makes the best training shorts in the world.
Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Mayn Idea Podcast, where today I have the pleasure of sitting down with George Hribar. If you love this podcast and want to support it, please take 30 seconds and leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This helps the show get discovered organically and helps me continue to bring on amazing guests. There's also now timestamps in the show notes, so feel free to jump around to the part that interests you most, although I always recommend listening to the episode in its entirety. George Hribar is the founder of Parry Athletics, a battle-tested Jiu Jitsu and strength training apparel brand with deep roots in skate, hip-hop, tattoo, and weightlifting culture. I train in Parry Athletics because they're durable, flexible, and artistically dope, but most of all, it doesn't break down, doesn't fray like some of the other brands that will remain nameless. I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did. It was a blast talking with George, getting deep on weightlifting culture, something that we both share. Please enjoy it. Without further ado, George Hribar. George, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, man. Aside from building brands and strength training and doing jiu-jitsu, I really appreciate you carving out the time in your schedule to get on the show.
Of course, man. I'm really excited. It's actually my first podcast, so.
Nice. Well, then we'll unpack all the good shit. Starting just kind of like a high level, and I asked you this specifically because I've come into contact personally with your brand, the quality, everything that you put together. What does style mean to you, and why is that important?
I think it really matters sort of how you do really anything that we do in this world, right? I think skateboarding is the biggest example. You know, there's plenty of people that are super technical on a skateboard, but you just don't like watching them ride it. And then, you know, maybe there's someone like Gino Iannucci who people just, you know, want to see him push. Just the way that he does it, there's a swagger. And that's what draws us to athletes. That's what draws us to musicians. That's what draws us to artists.
Yeah, it's wild when you're saying that. I think of like someone like Austin Gervais or like David Gonzalez. When you watch them skate, they might not be doing like the most technical thing you've ever seen, but it's the charging that they bring to the board in the streets that's like you kind of can't look away. You take someone like maybe like a Nigel Houston, who's like technically
first person that comes to mind,
right?
When you say
technically
that, right?
Unbelievable, one of the most technically skilled skaters of all time. All respect to him for everything that he's accomplished, but like it's kind of no one I'd rather not watch when they're on the board. When you're in something like, like Olympic weightlifting or jiu-jitsu, how does style play into those in your eyes?
So I think, Olympic weightlifting, I think it's kind of like the first time you ever see a real wrestler shoot a double leg, the first time you see a real Olympic weightlifter snatch, and you see like the power and grace in the movement, and there is a swagger, right? Like, I mean, think of Olympic weightlifting, like to maybe the naked eye, what a sort of monotonous thing to see. But, you know, for you and I and anybody that understands the sport, you know, you see that you love the way one person lifts, or you specifically love the way one person snatches, or how they, you know, specifically jerk the bar. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's almost indescribable. And I think sometimes seeing things for the first time in person can sort of help you understand what that means and why style, you know, and subtle differences matter and draw you in.
I think in brand creation, it seems ever pressing that matters, right? Because you're creating a product that exists. There's apparel to lift in, and there's apparel to grapple in, and it's been around for a while. But if you're going to create something that makes a mark, you kind of have to have this inherent view of how things are where you just get it in a different way. When you were initially deciding that you were going to come up with Parry and you were going to start this, where do you draw the inspiration for your brand from?
I mean, really sort of my life's kind of passions and interest. To maybe kind of dumb them down, what do those things mean? I mean, I grew up skateboarding, I grew up snowboarding, I grew up, listening to rap music, in the 90s through the early 2000s, always interested in art and graffiti. And those things to this day have really shaped sort of my outlook and opinion and view on sort of how I see the world. And, to be honest, it took me a little while to have the confidence to want to do this. I've had this idea of sort of wanting to make the perfect training short, and B, creative ideas and wanting to express myself outwardly, and it took, I don't know, maybe a little bit of professional success, maybe having some kids to have a little bit more confidence in who I am, and realize that I have a story and a unique opinion, to tell.
I think that's something that people struggle with constantly. I struggle with it, right? In any kind of entrepreneurial vein, doubt is your biggest enemy. And that all comes from you, right? That's something that you create for yourself and you battle with it every day. And then how you come out on the other side of that's really up to your perseverance. Like you said, life events can start to impact that. But I would imagine there's got to be nothing more scary, maybe than equal to starting a podcast, but launching a clothing brand, right? It's hard goods. It's in abundance. Why that vein instead of, let's say, getting into art in different mediums? What was it about apparel that was really grabbing at you? And you're like, you know what, based on the things I love, this growing up skateboarding, my interest in music, my understanding of Olympic weightlifting, and this passion for jiu-jitsu, how did that really transpire to clothing being the thing that you wanted to leave your mark on?
That's a good question. I think clothing has always been something that has been important to me and sort of the way that I've expressed myself. It was a little bit different back in the mid to late 90s. I was the weird captain of the lacrosse team, captain of the football team in middle school that wore the big baggy fucked, or the big blind jeans, and had a chain wallet, and I was still the captain of the football and lacrosse team. So I always had this opinion and sort of this dichotomy in the way that I did things. And to be honest, I think it's kind of in my family. My dad's a bit of a clothes horse and kind of cares about his style. His father was the same. He was a dentist in Queens, who wore custom suits and a fedora to work every day. It was off, an office, just basically a street side dental office. And then actually my great grandfather was a haberdasher. He made hats for a lot of the big department stores in New York City. So it's definitely something about clothes is definitely innate in me. Mm-hmm. And then, kind of how it went from sort of the creative side to the physical side of wanting the product. At the time when I prototyped the initial control short, I was kind of slowly transitioning from my kind of addiction, for lack of a better term, with Olympic weightlifting, and transitioning to full bore into my jiu-jitsu journey. Yeah. And really between those two, I kind of needed to solve the same thing. I couldn't find shorts that I wanted that fit the way I wanted, were made of the kind of quality and density fabric that I wanted. And I just it wasn't out there. I literally would take training clothes to the tailor. So it was sort of kind of twofold, right? I think I have this idea and this story to tell. And that was a really cool journey with some friends that are, in graphic design and in the apparel world, where I did an entire brand workshop, really just digging in on how we came to the name and the color scheme and all that. That was sort of one thing. And then the whole other side was prototyping this product and really trying to bring a product to market that's can differentiate itself in the quality and durability.
So was that in some essence, was that a passion project for you in the beginning, or did you kind of see this as I want to do this, I want to grow this into something that's a staple in the industry?
Definitely started as a passion project. 2017, right around New Year's, I told my wife I wanted to try to prototype the short. I had 4 or 5 different shorts that, there were elements of that I liked. And then a good friend of mine that I grew up with introduced me to my business partner, London Alexander, who is a extremely successful technical designer for one of the biggest one of the biggest sports apparel brands. He still works there now, and then he also runs a consulting business. So
Oh, rad.
the initial, the initial, I just brought him in on retainer to just design this one prototype, and then from there it just sort of snowballed. I did the brand exercise, and we kind of came to the name, and it slowly kind of built together. We prototyped the product. To be honest, in kind of 2018-19, I got really busy with my job at the time. I work in property technology, and it almost kind of fell by the wayside. And actually, London, my business partner, was like, "Hey, we got to like force this thing into production. Like, let's launch this." And we kind of did it literally the end of 2019, like right before the pandemic.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was a passion project at first. Obviously, the dream was always to make it, make it a reality. It's a dumb passion project. There's a lot more fun, easier things to do than try to start a clothing brand.
I've been reading about that though. That moment of like, you're doing something you give a shit about. That's a very, like, that can't really be underappreciated, because it's very easy to find yourself just plugging away for someone else's dream, just showing up, doing it. And if you're a driven person in any capacity, you're going to work hard because you're not a shithead, right? So you're going to show up on time. You're going to bust your ass. You're going to do all this work and all this effort. And it could be passionless. It could be completely pulled out of the moment. Or you can do something like this where you get to look back every day on what you've done, and it's fucking rad. You didn't cut corners anywhere. There's no material that just sucks, falls apart when you're training. If you find that out, you fix it right away. And you look back, and I mean, this could become, let's say you decide to stop doing it tomorrow. No one can take that away from you. I think that's one of the coolest things about people like yourself who follow these polls when you just like feel like maybe it's something that you should do, because it's invaluable, and you could even take that into anything else that you go do in the future, and anyone can, where it's an invaluable experience that you cannot remove from your life. And there's things that you learn in that process that you're just not going to get in a traditional 9-to-5 role.
Yeah. You nailed it. It's funny because I'm so proud of what I've done, and there's still so far to go, right? To make this like successful and a viable business, and maybe something that I can do full time, in the coming years. Right. And it's funny because my mom, when she gets, if she hears me being stressed about this or professional life or anything, she's like, "You should be so proud of what you did." And I'm like, "No, stop. Like, I didn't do anything yet. Like, there's still a far way to go. Like, please, like, let me keep going."
My fiance.
It's true. And to be honest, like, I work in technology, and I have a job that I like, but it is very hard to kind of motivate when I know what it's like to put my passion into something that is mine and that I'm truly passionate about.
It's crazy too when you get like some little piece of unsolicited feedback where maybe someone reaches out to you completely random. You didn't send out a customer service report. You're not doing a survey, and they're just like, "Yo, George, these are the sickest shorts I've ever gotten. It's so rad." Those moments hit you like pretty hard. And you're like, wow, this is, maybe it's the retail value on the shorts like $70, right? And you wish you could move 5,000 units, but you're only moving X amount. And you get this little piece from this person, and it's like, damn, it's connecting with someone. This idea that you had before that never even existed before you like got with your business partner and you guys drafted it up and you put it into production, you forced it into the market. Someone out there is appreciating that. That's like super rad.
Yeah, that bugs me out. Like, I have customers. One thing I have super loyal customers. Like I think my like return customer rate over like the last 2 years is like 30 or 40%. Like I have people that we drop a new rash guard, we drop a new short colorway. They're buying everything we do. I think that's like such a testament. Or I'll get messages. Someone's like, I live in rural Australia, and I walked into a gym and somebody else was wearing Parry. Like that bugs me out.
How do you like when you're growing that? I would imagine in the beginning stages of anything entrepreneurial, there's kind of like your vision of where you believe that you're capable of taking it. This goes back a little bit to the confidence thing you were talking about. Like there's a lot of roadblocks in the way to getting things going in the beginning because maybe you don't believe that you can do it or whatever. As you keep going, it kind of always feels like that, even though you make progress. So you look back and now you got a whole product line. You got collaborations you've done with incredible people. You've got athletes wearing your stuff on the biggest stages in the sport. How do you check yourself? What's your relationship like with progress around your own brand?
I'd say, admittedly, I probably have to kind of stop every once in a while and kind of enjoy the progress, because when you're in the middle of it and you're worrying about cash flow and I'm trying to figure out, how I'm going to pay for all of the inventory for 2024, how I'm going to pay for, sponsoring ADCC again. Those things are real and those things are day to day, and the bills you have to pay are day to day, and, whatever other headache or customer success, so you kind of have to stop every once in a while. And, talking to you like this and, you being impressed with what I've done so far, like, that's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, I've been impressed for good reason. Like I had heard, so I actually think I first heard about Parry, probably seeing it on an athlete, but then fellow podcaster JT from Australia, who does the Bulletproof for BJJ podcast.
Yeah, they're the best. Yeah, I sponsor their podcast, and we're like working on collabing on some products. So yeah, they're the best.
So JT was wearing the hat, and I was like, wait, that's the same. But then I somehow never made the connection. When I actually got my hands on, dude, I've been in the health and fitness industry for the better part of 10 years professionally. And I have worn and tested a ton of apparel from, Lululemon, Nike, Arc'teryx, everything out there that you can like do a workout in. Somehow I've ended up doing it. And there's a ton of trash, on like a large scale, like very poorly made things that break down all the time. Stylistically, they look horrible. And how are you sourcing your materials? Because it's a noticeable step. I'll give the perfect example. And I love Ruka to death in terms of their design and their ethos, what they've done for like their fighters and their backgrounds in skate culture and surf culture. But dude, I roll in their shorts a month and like the seams are flying out.
Yeah, I've had the same thing happen.
And dude, I got their wetsuits. I have, rolling shorts, rash guards, stuff, different things over the years from skateboarding as a kid. And like, there's a noticeable quality difference and in felt durability, which is I think that's a hard thing to come by in what you're making. So how do you make those decisions? How do you know if you're finding the right kind of quality stuff to make a product that you can put out and market? Because there's so many opportunities to make something cheap and bad that gives you good margins.
Definitely some discipline. So in the beginning, I didn't know any better because all I wanted to do was make this perfect short. And I'd really say that I could not be here making the level of quality product I make without my business partner, London Alexander. Like I said, he's deep in the design game. He's a really talented designer. He knows fabrics and he knows supply chain. So to have that person be who I started with and, be able to send me fabrics and me be able to have my opinion about, I don't like this. This is too light. We need to have something more durable than this, but has a little bit more of a softer hand feel. If I was doing that on my own, it could be years of R&D, but for him to sort of understand who are the key players, where to go for this, knowing what the best technical, fabric manufacturers are, sort of expedited that process. And then same thing from a design perspective. I had some like unique design opinions, particularly on the control short we made them. So to be able to sort of have those opinions, get a prototype, and have somebody that's that skilled be able to execute on that, I wouldn't be able to do without him. And then two, frankly, I probably have no business with the minimums that I'm doing getting into any of the factories that I do, but his 20-year relationships allow that to happen.
Yeah, you can't place a high enough value on quality relationships, I think, in any business. Like any kind of mentorship or guidance where there's just an asymmetrical knowledge advantage is so useful. But even on I mean, if you were to talk to someone who's maybe for the example, we'll stick to apparel just because of your knowledge of it. How important is it to start with something manageable? Like you talk a lot about this control short, despite this big catalog of available apparel that you now produce and is worn by some of the best athletes in the world. How important was it to stick to that one design, to like really hone in on crafting this one thing that was kind of your connection point between these worlds that you had lived in versus going, you know what, my guy London's got the skill set. He's understood large scale production and design. Let's just swing for the fences and go, full kits, full production for like an entire season of stuff. How important is it to stay small like that?
I think it takes some discipline because if you're a creative person and I have a lot of ideas, I sometimes like to be like talked off the ledge from my business partner and then my brand manager Sam because I always have crazy ideas. So there is a discipline and that is something that we're purposely trying to do. Like we want to be known as the company that makes the best training shorts in the world. So to do that, you have to stay like disciplined, very limited SKUs on your shorts and hone and perfect those things. And then as you become, known for that specific product and you build a fan base, then it's a lot easier to sort of like take that fan base along for the journey, go into, whatever else it is. But don't get me wrong. I've had some mistakes along the way. Like I had this amazing cut and sew made in Los Angeles French terry sweatsuits that I did like super early on, like nice. 2020. And they're beautiful. Like still some of the like most beautiful things that I've ever made. And I don't know, I probably gave away like 85% of it was probably like seeded and I didn't sell any of it. And even to this day, like we'll make things that like, just be like, can we remind ourselves that like, we don't move hats. Like no one's quite ready to like rock the hat as like, it's the rash guards and the shorts. Like people love the designs on the rash guards and people love the quality of the shorts.
It's so hard, man. It's fantastic to hear you say these because it's good for me to hear too. It's, I'll use the example of episodes. Like it is, the idea of bringing people along is so true. Like if you want to have a show where you interview everybody, nobody's going to listen. And it's going to be very hard to grow within the space because you haven't defined your space. There's nothing there. But if you hunker down to a niche, and it's almost annoying to me how true this is because you hear people in marketing and brand strategy talk about this all the time. But if you find a niche and you really own it, you build these raving fans like you talked about earlier, these people that are like, you drop a sock, the sock's gone because they're buying every single one of them. Then when you decide to do a collaboration with Thrasher or something, that person's going to bridge the gap into skate culture with you. But if you had done that in the beginning, they'd be like, I'm not a skater, right? So they don't do that. So staying specific to like your zone and doing things that you do and doing them really well is so valuable. It's so important to remember that. Because I struggle with that too all the time. I'm pulled in a million different directions. Very much like you, I have a background in so many different spots, having also grown up a skateboarder, competed in Olympic weightlifting, a competitive skier, loving Jiu Jitsu, podcast and production. It's very easy to be like, let your creative mind run, and now you're just stuck in the weeds making things that nobody wants.
Yeah. I'd say having a good team helps me with that because I am sort of that creative, unorganized maniac who comes up with lots of ideas and just texts them to people. And I'm constantly told like, put these in the line plan for 2024, like put that in Asana so you don't forget it. But that's not the way my brain works. So, building a good team also helps that discipline. So like that I have somebody that can like constantly rein me in, or, my graphic designer, art director, Cole Franson, who, has an ability to take these ideas in my head and like truly bring them to fruition in a way that I've like never seen with another graphic designer. And then my brand manager, Sam, like he's there to sort of like bring that discipline and organization into it. Cause I could go off in a million different directions.
How do you learn how to trust people in those instances?
I'm probably not the right person to ask on that. I'm like the default trust people too much and then get burned.
Nice.
I'm kind of the default, like,
Yeah.
until you prove me wrong, like I'll trust you. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just over time and building a rapport. I built
Yeah.
a rapport with, London over years of working in sort of this consulting capacity. And then it moved into him being a partner. Same thing with my brand manager, Sam. He was one of London's employees and now he's, has equity in Parry because of the work that he's done. And he actually was in town from Vancouver. He went to some like hardcore show in Sacramento, and he actually slept on my couch with like hanging with my kids on Monday night. So, yeah, you just kind of I guess trial and error, and then you find the people that are good and stick with them.
Yeah, I wish our powers could combine because I tend to fall on the complete opposite side of the spectrum where I'm like very unwilling to give anyone creative control of anything, and it's such a detriment because to everything you've just said, like it's so powerful. The power of collaboration with intelligent minded people who are skilled in what they're doing is incredible. It really opens doors up that otherwise wouldn't. And I struggle with the releasing the reins kind of thing to let people have that. And you can get stuck in your own lane as a result of that. But when you're building something off the ground, how much of that is conscious? Like you're kind of getting to a point and going, I need the next person that's going to help move this along. And how much of that is advice through mentorship or people that are already kind of in the mix and you're just completely pulling them into the fold?
A little bit of that's happening right now. Again, not to get boring, but like literally in the process of like finalizing. I have an investor, one small investor. I'm sort of finalizing this equity piece with everybody that is involved and sort of rightfully, is getting a piece of equity in the brand. So yeah, that buy-in from them and their sort of commitment to the brand is increased by that. I do have some consultants and stuff that I work with, and admittedly, it can be tough, like because I'm sort of that creative person. So I don't know. The X is I'm for growing the brand. I'm not for the bottom line, at least not yet. So it's nice to have somebody look and be like, yeah, you have to be more organized with this. Like what is the decision around the quantities that you're buying? Why are we doing this? It can be a little tough to kind of let go of the reins or have somebody be critical of the way that you're running, this thing that I started. It started in my brain and it's still mine. And then there's people telling me that I'm not doing parts of it well. Yeah, it can be tough to swallow. You have to check your ego and not get defensive.
I think that's lessons learned in skateboarding a million times. When along this from the production of the first short and the shirt as well, were you already involved in jiu-jitsu? When did you make the kind of transition to bring this into a brand that does obviously training shorts and things that you can use in weightlifting, but there's a clear departure from that where you make really high quality stuff for grappling specifically?
Good question. So I'll even go back to my I'll go a little like a brief history of my athletic career.
Yes.
I played lacrosse. I was a Division I athlete. I played lacrosse in college. Post college. I don't know if you had this, but there's this like weird, before there was like CrossFit and Olympic weightlifting like in the ether, you were like, oh, I have to become like a runner or a triathlete,
Yeah.
and I'm 5'9", 220 pounds, and I ran the New York City Marathon. I did the New York City Triathlon. I was cycling a lot, and I love those activities. I'm just certainly not built for it. So like, finding CrossFit in the early to mid 2000s, I trained at a gym in New York City called the Black Box. I think it was like the 6th CrossFit affiliate.
Wow.
And so that like really like excited me again, sort of just like getting back into lifting that I had always done for school. And then from there it was like this idea of like, well, I've been toiling with Olympic weightlifting, in jiu-jitsu, in CrossFit, but I like don't know how to do this, and like I can't even snatch like 108. I can't even snatch like 84 kilos.
Yeah.
So then actually we moved to Austin, Texas, and Olympian Chad Vaughn was like running a fundamentals like Olympic weightlifting class,
Wow.
and I felt so I was like we lived there for 1 year. I fell in love with the sport. That was probably like 2013,
Yeah.
2012. Fell in love with the sport. Competed the first time when we were in Texas, and then we moved back to the Bay Area, and that was when Amy Everett and Greg Everett still had Catalyst.
Wow, dude. All the hair just stood up.
Yeah, so
I'll tell you later, but yeah.
So that was when they still had Catalyst down in the South Bay.
Yep.
So I started training with Amy. My buddy Angel and I would go down there every Friday, or excuse me, every Monday after work. Lift there on Mondays, and then she would write my program. So I got like really, late in life, I was in my 30s, but got super into it, competed really often. And then around 2016 was when I started training jiu-jitsu. And it was like, I kept some numbers like decent, and then as I like transitioned to the jiu-jitsu, like the weightlifting just like fell apart. And it was okay because obviously I was obsessed with jiu-jitsu at that point. So again, I started prototyping the shorts in 2017. So I was, a white belt. I think I got my blue belt at the end of 17. So, very new on the journey. I started the journey because, at the time, my 5-year-old identical twin son started training. So they started training in like January of 2016. I started training about a month after them. So slowly as the brand built, and it was maybe initially specifically around like Olympic weightlifting, it just with my passion like morphed into jiu-jitsu, and then the idea of sponsoring athletes kind of solidified that. I also think, to be honest, like the fact that the rash guard is this really cool canvas to like kind of get creative was also something that also helped me sort of run with that side of it. It was like a way to express myself creatively away from just the shorts. So that was how the transition happened.
It's so funny that Greg and Amy Everett, so one of my clients and I would both run his programs. So I competed off of his Catalyst athletic programs, and then I actually went to coach one of my clients at a masters meet in San Diego, and he was there, and so we're like almost like adult fanboys, right? We're like, hey man, we do your program, I coach him, I'm on your programs, he just competed, and then my client ended up going and doing camps when they moved to Oregon. So you go out there for weeks, and I mean that guy is. There's a few people, and I've only come into contact with this in the fitness industry because that's my vein, but there's some people that are like, dude, their wealth of knowledge is so deep on something. He's just like it's like a weightlifting genius, dude.
100%.
It's like there's people that just have no idea, right? Like he thinks about like weightlifting the way that like Zuckerberg probably thinks about like social media and the metaverse. It's crazy. His intuitive knowledge and just the thousands and thousands and thousands of words that he's written that are extremely coherent on a sport that is so small and so technical are like, I mean, my hat is off to him on so many levels. But it's funny the parallels in our life and age, the sports that we were involved in, and when we got into jiu-jitsu. So I have to ask you, coming from like your peak strength, competing often, strength training, like if you're competing in Olympic weightlifting, you're on some serious training splits. It's not just showing up and doing calf raises at the gym and shoulder shrugs.
Yeah.
And then finding jiu-jitsu, how did you manage those two intensities when you got into it?
So yeah, I mean, it's like it truly did just like dwindle. And, I think the maybe frustrating thing about weightlifting, it can be fun for a while as you get some of those like noob gains. But, as a then 38-year-old, as a 38-year-old, you're toiling away with the sport, and I have a professional career, and suddenly I have to travel for work, and it throws off, a 6-week or 8-week training program. And you're toiling away for like another kilo. It can be like it's a pretty grueling hobby.
So really.
It's a pretty grueling hobby. So when I discovered jiu-jitsu, and there's just so much to learn, and obviously we all know how humbling it is when you first go in there, but so much to learn, and to know that like you could train 3 days a week, 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And there's always like, you're always learning, like,
Mm-hmm.
and those leaps and bounds in the beginning are just like, so, they're just like endless. So to go from something where it's like, Jesus Christ, like I haven't put a kilo on my total in 6 months. Like this is a dumb hobby for a guy with 3 kids and 3 dogs, like to this hobby that you could just, it just was like, to me, it was like never ending, like learning when I got to jiu-jitsu. So I tried, I tried and I maintained some numbers. It was easier to kind of maintain just like the big lifts, like my squat, my front squat, my deadlift, like that type of stuff. But the snatch and clean and jerk, like go away really,
So
really
fast.
quick.
It's so demoralizing. You think of like all the time and the months, and the sessions are long because you got to warm up and you got to do your mobility work and you got to do your bar work and you got to make your hips are greased, and like you get going. By the time you're done, a low intensity, low volume day is like an hour plus training session. And then the days where you're like, maxing out or something, it could be a 2.5 hour session.
Saturdays, yeah. I ran a barbell club in my buddy's gym. It was San Francisco Barbell Club. We were like a sanctioned barbell club. It was in Telegraph CrossFit, my buddy Angel's gym, and like honestly, some of my fondest memories were those like Saturday mornings and getting there and hitting your heavy singles with the homies. Like honestly, like so I still, it's like so pathetic. Like I still have like I'll send you the account. I have a San Francisco Barbell account, and it's like I'll still like I'll have a whiskey late at night and my wife will be asleep and I'll be like reminiscing about the good old days.
All right, I don't even care. Like the listeners, you're along for this ride. Talk to me about this, because I've had this same experience. There was this barbell club called Venice Barbell Club in Los Angeles on Lincoln that you might have even been to. It was an extension of Paradiso CrossFit that's in like Venice proper. They were a really early CrossFit affiliate in LA. They had an in-house barbell program. They then rented out this zone. And granted, long-winded story, but it came at like an interesting time in my life where having this place to go and just like be in it, there was like there was just a group of people there. It was pretty small. I mean, on any day that you went in, there was probably 8 or 10 of us. And all you're doing is going in there and you're throwing barbells around. And we got, the WWE fold-out plastic wrestling chairs up against the wall that you'd sit in between sets. Everyone's just rocking spandex, and like, it's such a weird environment. But there is something, you know what it reminds me of in a weird way? Do you listen to punk music when you were growing up?
Yes, just I'm by no means like a head, but just peripherally because of I've always been more on the rap side. But I know enough punk that you could
like maybe you could even draw the similarity here on like being in New York and listening to hip hop and like really being in the hip hop culture. There's this pureness to what's going on that's like it's not faded by the rest of the industry that it's in. So like you show up at a punk show and like there's straight edge dudes just going as hard as everyone else because that's just the energy. It's something about it. And there's this weird thing about Olympic weightlifting. It's like a super, super, super niche culture, but it's like, I don't know. How would you describe it? That why is it that you're there having a whiskey on an evening night and you're thinking about like this room with 5 people in it, barbells and chalk, and just trying to lift heavier weight on these extremely technical lifts?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's definitely being sort of drawn to like kind of like weirdo culture and things that are like off the beaten path. Like, there was that weird time in the mid 2000, in the 2010s to 2015 where, this sport was like rediscovered because of CrossFit. So It did feel like you were involved in this thing. And then, I mean, we could get into like the old Bulgarian, the amazing Bulgarian videos on YouTube and watching those videos. And there's just a vibe and an energy to those guys. You could go to the old Donnie Schenkel, Donnie Schenkel is stronger than you video. Like, give me a break. Like you watch that and you're like, I need to get involved in this. Like, just something about it. And then another thing, and I think like there's an element to it in jiu-jitsu, I mean, is there any better sound than like being in a warm up room and hearing a bunch of barbells dropping? Like
The
it's
clank,
amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
That I'm so glad you brought up the Donnie Schenkel video because my client and I mean, it literally felt like you were discovering a genre of music that none of your friends knew about yet that would just ripped, dude. And when we
100%.
found those, like, we would watch. You know, I'm sitting in my apartment back in LA when I lived up there, and I'm watching these 45-minute long videos of just Donnie Schenkel and John North and these guys going back and forth lifting these crazy weights. And I mean, these are legendary videos. But there's no way to communicate the ethos of that video to someone who knows nothing about weightlifting.
No, not at all.
It's like a weird
It's also
little
like a
like club.
capsule in time. Yeah. And it's
Totally.
also like it's a real capsule in time. Like I was thinking to your point, you were saying like, being at a punk show and like there's this authenticity, and I like plenty of new rap. I'm not like a, old school only type of guy. I listen to plenty
Right.
of new stuff, but there was this element where like, I don't know, even like look at the fashion of say like 90s New York rap. Like it wasn't like trying to look like you're wearing Carhartt and Dickies. It just like was Carhartt and Dickies, or maybe like a polo. Like it wasn't like this like thing yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what you saw in that video. It wasn't this thing yet.
Totally. And I asked myself, you watch the video that we're talking about of Donnie Schenkel when he's just, the one where he just hits like hang clean after hang clean after hang clean after hang clean. And I mean, I don't know what the guy was taking at that point in his life, right? But he's going hard. And I asked myself, I'm like, if it weren't for this, if this wasn't a thing, what's a guy like Donnie Schenkel doing? I mean, that's him. He is Olympic weightlifting realized, right? And
Yeah.
there's something super, super pure about that.
I literally could remember him hitting that. Like he finally hit. I don't even know what it was. It was probably like 200 or 220 or something. And he's like calls it a silly little thing, and he kicks the bar. He kicks the barbell. Like to me, like watching those videos is like the same as me watching like Plan B, the questionable video that came out in like 1993, and with Mike Carroll and all those guys, at Embarcadero. Like it's a moment in time that was captured, and it's special, and it can be like motivating.
When you're making these shorts, when you were putting together design for this, a lot of times when entrepreneurs start something, right, they're solving a problem. So like they experience something that doesn't work or is mixed up in their industry or in their line of work, and they aim to fix it, and that solution produces whatever product they go on to create within the business. So when you were making this short, what was it about? I'm thinking in my head of CrossFit apparel at the time, like those basically like big board shorts, like your gym tee, kind of just like cotton soaked up sweat and chalk. What was it where you're like, you know what? I want to fix this. Like, this is a problem. What was it about the apparel at the time? And then what did you aim to improve upon when you made that first go?
Yeah, good question. So this is a weird thing. I hate training in lighter weight shorts, and our like core short that I sent you, that's the lightest weight short we make, and it actually sells very well. It's a lot of people's favorite short, but I prefer lifting in something that's like much more dense and thick. So like I never like training in like mesh shorts. I never like training in, like a thin kind of like running short, or like, just so many of these like shorts that came out, the 10,000 gears and Roan and Viore. I don't even know how to say it. It's this very like benign design and extremely lightweight fabric. And there's something I don't like about that. Like I want it to be like tactile, and that also makes it durable. So I actually used to train in board shorts, but again, there's, most of them don't have any stretch. So there's like a missing functionality there. Yes. So it was really like, kind of doing something off of a board short that had a heavy hemline and a very, very heavy GSM. Yeah. So I just wanted something that was durable and super heavyweight. Like, I mean, when my when London started sending me samples, and I'd be like, he's like, well, most shorts are like 120 GSM. Here's like 180 GSM. And I was like, no, like it's got to be more. It's got to be more. I think the control short is like almost 300 GSM. So it's like more than twice as
GSM is like a stitching quantity.
It's grams per square meter. It's how you measure the weight and density of a fabric.
Yep.
So it was really something that could fit like my thick thighs and ass of a Olympic weightlifter at the time. You know, I'm again, like I said, I'm 5'9", 215. Yeah, that was it. Like something that could fit what I wanted, be durable, and that I could know was there. As weird as that sounds, like I don't like feeling like I'm wearing like a silk scarf around my legs.
Yeah, I can see too because of the clean movement, you get so much mid-thigh contact, and like, I mean, straight up, you just rip through shorts if they're bad. Yeah. If they're poor quality or they're thin, or running short or something like that, you just shred them. You shred them or you shred your legs, like one of the two. So when you're making that trade-off, it makes sense to get something that's a little bit like thicker. But even in the short, the grappling short, it's really tough, but it's not restrictive. Like that's a kind of a unique experience to me, because in the past I've either had really tough, durable, almost like feels like you're wearing Carhartts or something like that, or you get super stretchy like a 10,000, like a Roan, like a Vori, but you don't really feel like you can push the limits in your strength training in it. So how do you achieve, like, those seem kind of like opposite sides of the world.
So I'd really say trial and error. I mean, we prototype a lot. And I like to beat the crap out of my stuff. And what I mean by that is obviously like, you know, training hard in it, feet get stuck in it, it gets yanked, making sure that making sure that, you know, seams are tacked down, you know, doubly so. And then the other thing that I'm big on, and London will always yell at me, is like, I wash my stuff on, dry my stuff on high. And even though that kind of like, from the factory's perspective, kind of like, you know, ruins the warranty. Yeah. I know that someone's going to take this stuff, they're going to train in it, they're going to throw it in a bag, they're going to throw it on the ground, you know, they're going to put it in the washing machine, put it on high, and use it the next day. So really just trial and error. Again, having somebody that knows fabric so well, and, you know, him sort of understanding what I want, made it a little bit easier to kind of lead me to that type of fabric. But yeah, trial and error, and just beating the crap out of everything.
How do you make the decision to not go into gi production? And perhaps you're thinking about doing that, but going through the site and looking at everything, you're just capturing the fashion element of grappling without cutting the cost of making like shitty material in the process. Gis seem like a great opportunity for that, right? I mean, the retail value on them are pretty high. I imagine the materials are pretty low, but you could make a really sick, durable, kind of a fitted or something gi. Is there a reason why you've kept that out of production?
Yeah, good question. Part of it is if I really want to differentiate and have a gi that is to the level of quality of the shorts that we make, I think from an R&D, I don't quite have those production relationships. So it would take a long time and probably a lot of money to really get it right the way that I want. Yeah. So that sort of left me kind of, you know, just hanging tight on it and maybe thinking about it. The other thing is that, you know, this is by far and away a jiu-jitsu brand. Why is I don't know why my Siri keeps going off. I apologize.
No, you're good. It happens to me too. She wants to be part of the conversation, man.
So, you know, it's undoubtedly a jiu-jitsu brand, and obviously anybody that's like ahead in that sport is going to get that angle and that authenticity. I think by not making a gi makes it a lot easier for me to potentially transition into strength and conditioning, and even just to like a broader short, or, you know, have like a really cool shop say like, this is a rad brand. I'm willing to put this in my store. Or somebody could go to the website and say like, oh, I'm not, you know, this is a jiu-jitsu brand, but I know what jiu-jitsu is, and I'm not too intimidated. I'm not going to feel like a poser to wear it. I think the gi can kind of take that to another level.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. There is like that transferability. It's an interesting time for jiu-jitsu, because it's with the growth of nogi and especially the explosion, I'd say, over the last like 5 years, when you've really seen it take center stage with ADCC and their production, and how there's almost like it's the uniform, right? Like the gi has always been the gi, but there's not much variance or ability to express yourself with it, because there's limitations in a lot of academies. They want you in a specific gi, they want a specific patch on the back. But no-gi is kind of like this free-for-all where it's for those that are interested, it's an opportunity to kind of express your style, right? And you see the biggest athletes in the sport doing this and partnering up with brands that maybe otherwise wouldn't have had as much of a place in the industry. Do you see this as like Parry can kind of at some point grow beyond jiu-jitsu in terms of like taking that group of people, the fans, people that are involved with it, but position then as like, I don't want to call it streetwear to box you into that, but kind of along that lines where it's apparel well beyond the mats, well beyond everything that you're doing in the training hall, and goes into like personal lifestyle, day-to-day brand kind of thing.
Yes, 100%. I mean, that's the goal. And I think that, I think jiu-jitsu is at this place, in the ether of pop culture where it's much more aware. I mean, look at like the A&P Nike, SB
Right?
like drop, and it's on StockX, and I don't know, they're like still selling for a premium. Like that's pretty crazy for our sport. So I think the idea of jiu-jitsu being more and more popular in the ether, and the brand being able to grow from that is totally ready to go. I always use the analogy that Lululemon is still at its heart a yoga brand. Supreme is still, as big as it is, it's still a skate brand, and they're still like very deep and true to that. Arc'teryx is for people that climb extremely hard mountains. Right. That like I don't know that they sponsor athletes that I don't know, but people still wear Arc to go to the store.
Right. Yeah, it's when I look into jiu-jitsu as a space, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you described it similarly to that pocket, the way that weightlifting felt like that back in kind of the early mid 2000s. Is there camaraderie amongst you and like the VHTSs and the Albino Pretos and these other brands? Or is it competitive between you guys within the same space?
It's not competitive. Certainly not for me. I think there's room for everybody. I'd say so Lorenz from Hyperfly, he came up to our booth at Parry and at ADCC and introduced himself, said, "I really love what you guys are doing." And we chat from time to time, and I've spoken to some other people in the business. So at least not the way that I see it. I think that, I don't know. I just, it seems like a terrible way to waste your energy worrying about what other people are doing.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of people and brands get caught up in that, though, right? Like there's not enough to go around, but there's different preferences and different styles to everything. I mean, look at skateboarding is again a great example. Not that it's the most profitable industry in the world, right? But look at how many brands create really cool stuff with inside skateboarding. And they all cater to like a different skater, a different vibe, a different style, and yet everyone's on the same board with the same trucks and the same wheels. Yeah. It's just a cool, like, I don't know. I think there's so much to be pulled and appreciated from that, from the culture of skateboarding. In the same way, I think that there's parallels in jiu-jitsu. Like the barriers to entry to both are pretty low. Right? You can have an interest, you can go get a skateboard, you can get a membership, and both of those things actually run you almost the same price, and you're involved in the thing. And then it's a willingness to like show up repeatedly and participate in it and get slammed and get smashed and fall and bounce back up and keep going that make them so fucking cool.
Yeah. They're, I think there's a good analogy there. It's also interesting, like if you look at skateboarding, like, how like a new brand, you'd think how many times can somebody like you said, it's the same popsicle board, it's the same, they're probably printing on the same blank tee, but still, like there's always this creative angle, like I don't know, like look at the GX 1000 guys, like just coming out of nowhere with this idea of like, we're just going to bomb hills in San Francisco. And like,
so nuts,
this entire different angle. And Yeah, it's super cool. It's never ending. There's never ending creativity, and you are seeing that in jiu-jitsu. I mean, we could use the B team as an example, right? Like,
Totally.
there's this idea and this attitude, and you're gonna either gravitate towards the B team or you're gonna gravitate towards a new wave, and it's like
Yep.
pretty clear that those are two different types of people, you know?
Yeah, and the the dudes in San Francisco are so nuts, man. That is like it climbs up my gnarly meter. Like every time I see a clip from them, I'm like, dude, the risk reward. The reward is clout in a small community, right? The risk is like you straight up die. You get hit by a car, you straight up die. I mean, those hills are so steep. The speed wobbles are. If you fall going 50 miles an hour with a freaking cut off Megadeth t-shirt on and jeans, like you're not stopping in 10
done.
feet, you know? It's so nutty.
But one of them, one of the riders, Pablo, he passed away. I think he hit a garbage truck. Yeah,
so
crazy.
sad, man.
And it's
so
crazy because like I'm such a dork. Like I'll like going to like coffee, like a business like lunch or something, and I like see them on the street, and I like feel like I'm seeing like rock star or something.
I've always felt the same way. There's few things that I like. I said the Greg Everett fanboy thing is so silly to me, but like I could see a big celebrity and it just doesn't really hit me the same. But if I'm out and I see someone that I'm like, oh damn, that's like someone that I looked up to when I was a kid. You know, who were we? We were in Encinitas, where I live, and my buddy was down that I grew up in Colorado with, and oh my God, I'm gonna totally blank on who we saw, but it was like his childhood hero snowboarder, right? And he went up to him and he was like, my buddy's 34, right? Like we're full grown adults, and he went up and he was like, hey man, I just you're so inspired me when I was a kid. And the guy was like, I mean, he's super chill about it, but it's just funny, like the pedestal that I put skateboarders and snowboarders and skiers on and surfers when I was a kid, they were just untouchable. I mean, they're so much bigger to me than like a Hollywood A-lister or something like that. It was really special, and they're just humans, but they had this major impact when I was a kid, a major impact on me. Everything that I thought about, that looked up to, that I appreciated was coming out of these same cultures. It's wild. Yeah. How did the NASCAR thing come about? What's the story behind that?
So that's again just like we just were a lot of the creative is done between like myself, my brand manager Sam, and then my art director Cole Franson, and we were just coming through some ideas, and the initial idea that was going to be on was like we were going to make more of like an all over print, like if you think of like a NASCAR with like all of the stickers of the sponsors, and it's like Snickers, M&M, like that. So we were going to actually just redo the Parry logo and a bunch of different, a flip on a Snickers logo, a flip on an M&M. And then like from that, we're always creating all these mood boards. We kind of just got into this like, 90s Dale Earnhardt, like big graphic tees. And again, this is where like when I work with somebody like Cole, who's so creative, and I can kind of have this like loose idea, and then he just was like slowly pulling more stuff in sort of that like 90s Dale Earnhardt era. And he's like, I think I have like another idea here. He's like, we're going to do like a big all over print tee and car. And then I don't even know if you can tell if you look in the back, like the driver is getting rear naked choked.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, take a look now. And that's just like Cole. That's just Cole's creativity. So, and that's also where like I can't, I've worked with a lot of graphic designers, and the reason that Cole is around and the reason that he's my art director at this point is because I've never been so on like the same wavelength. And he's super versatile. He can do like, just like straight, sans serif font, super easy graphics to like crazy caricatures. We're actually working right now. It hasn't come out yet, but I don't know, maybe when this comes out, we're doing, so Magid is doing a seminar tour in Europe to promote his like Half Guard, Life Guard DVD, which is a great DVD. So we have like a tour, like souvenir tee coming out for that. And like, wait, you see the graphic that it came out with. It's insane. So to have somebody like that A is like on my wavelength, and then B, like I kind of give him a long leash. So if I start seeing him like going in another direction, like I let him go, you know what I mean? Like I don't try to like contain it. So it's a really special relationship.
That reminds me a lot of like when I started getting tattooed. I think in the beginning I was like felt like everything I wanted things to be like meaningful, and I wanted to be like real particular, and I'm like, well, it's on my body the rest of my life, blah blah blah. And then you get this point, you realize that like, dude, you're going to an artist. You're not going to like some guy that's a computer pro. You're going to an artist. You're going to someone who thinks creatively and draws for a living. They've actually made their profession out of doing this. And on top of that, they are the ones who are putting the tattoos on people's body all the time. They know contours and skin and placement and size and all this stuff. So when you go to a tattoo artist and you tell them that you want something the size of a $50 that has like your whole family tree inside of it and blah, blah, they're like, this fucking guy. But if you're like, hey, I'm kind of into this, like, what do you think? And you get their input and then you kind of let them roll with it. Those are always the dopest tattoos. They're the sickest ones because the artist gave a shit while they were making it, because you gave them a little bit of leeway to like do the thing that they want to do. You don't ask Picasso to paint like realism. It's not his deal, right? You let him do his fucking thing.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, get it. It's like what did Too Short said? Like, get in where you fit in. You know what I mean? And like, and yeah, you're not supposed to. Yeah, you go to a tattoo artist for, their style, and like you said, they're the ones that know what looks good. They're doing it day in and day out. They know what's going to hold up. They know it's going to read well from a long distance. Yeah, so pick something off the wall and just go with it.
When did you start getting tattooed?
Pretty late in life. I started getting tattooed, I think, at 25. And then again,
24.
Yeah, and then like most things, and I was pretty lucky. I stumbled into a shop on Long Island called Kings Avenue Tattoo. A guy, Mike Rubendahl. He's very famous for his Japanese work.
Sick.
And yeah, I got this elephant from him. Had no clue that I like walked into like one of the like world's premier tattoo artists, and kind of like anything else I do from there, it just got to be a huge passion in my life. Right around that time, I don't know if you're familiar, Smith Street Tattoo Parlor, guy Burt Crack and Eli Quinters. It's a super famous like Brooklyn, like New York style tattoo shop, and I became friendly. I've been getting tattooed there for like over 15 years, and
wow,
built really good relationships, and yeah.
What do you, when you go into to get tattooed, or having gotten tattooed as much as you have, and I mean, you're talking about the time when like tattoo conventions were a big thing, right? Instagram wasn't around yet, so you had like Tattoo Magazine and Flash Magazine and all these things that they felt very like Sturgis biker, kind of almost like a nudie magazine, but it wasn't. It had art in it, and it's just like a different time. I mean, when you go in now and get tattooed, what do you pull from? Do you even have space left? Obviously, your face is not tattooed, but
yeah, no, so I just finished I just finished my back with my buddy Bert in New York. I have a big like Tibetan tiger on my back. It was a painting by a famous Los Angeles tattooer named Bob Roberts, who recently passed away. And I've been working on that since 2018, like, COVID, trying to get to Brooklyn, and just pain in the ass. So super stoked. We finished that this summer. And then besides that, just kind of little spots here and there, spot on my quad, the back of my hamstrings. And I don't know, the older you get and the more tattooed you get, the novelty wears off a little bit. And you just
totally,
this is the dumbest hobby. Like, why am I torturing myself? But it's a huge, huge part of my life. And I've met a lot of really great friends and people through the tattoo community.
I also think, I mean, obviously I could do this all day, right? I love talking to people. This is, it's a passion of mine for sure. And there's something about that. There's like this intimacy when you're getting a tattoo with someone, you're with them for, however long you're going to do it. And there's a lot of like, it reminds me, to keep drawing on this, it reminds me so much of just like shooting the shit in a skate shop when I was a kid. You're skating the ledge out back and you're getting wax at the Walmart to make it slide, and then you're going inside and you're trying to get free stickers and stuff, and like there's this like substance to just doing nothing other than chopping it up with people at the shop that was like very much a big part of being a kid. And when you go in and get tattooed, like the stories that you share and the things you talk about, there's nowhere for you to go. You can't leave. And
Yeah.
unless you're, a total asshole and you're just scrolling on Instagram the whole time, it's this cool opportunity to talk to someone that's like, tattoo artists are cool, man. They've got wild fucking stories, especially ones that have been doing it for so long. And it's super rad art. My buddy, when I was younger, he got this back piece that was like, it's basically like Ghost Rider, but from the top of his neck like down to the bottom. And I sat with him for a couple of those sessions, and I was like, I don't think I'll ever get my back tattooed. I mean, he just looked like in pure agony, man, for like hours. How did that? You said you've done it over a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Where does that match up to sensation pain level for other spots?
I'd say back's pretty awful. The ribs are really awful. But it is. I think it's a real. It's a real. Like there is just the banter. Like when I go to Smith Street with my homies Bert and Eli. Like there's just this banter. Like they're larger than life characters, and just being in the room makes you laugh and is fun. And then like you said, then you're in this like sort of intimate. Maybe you're having a chat about your kids or what's going on at school, just, one-on-one while you're getting tattooed, while like you're also like in this pain. Like it's a very hard, if you've never
cathartic.
done it, it's kind of hard to like understand what about it is like fulfilling. I don't know, like this idea that you kind of like, you ground through this and then you got to the other end. And then there is always this like high of like, beer never tastes as good like right after you get tattooed,
I had my both my feet tattooed, but the second time, which was nuts, because after the first time I was like, I'll never fucking get my feet tattooed again. But when I got my left one done, it was like from the toes all the way around the back and then up. And dude, I mean, you described it so well. Like when that was done, it was like 6.5 hours, something. My foot was like a fucking watermelon. I mean, the thing, like I wheeled it out basically, and, we ordered pizza after the end and we just sat there and we ate it and we like laughed about how fucking insane this stupid tattoo was. And then you're just chopping it up and nothing is so good. Like the pizza tasted, so it's like bad pizza, but it tasted really good.
Yeah.
Beer when I got home tasted so good. It's such a unique and cool experience. And it's such a blend of like really rad cultures. I'm sure the scene in New York must just be incredible. I mean, I've wanted to get tattooed forever by Mark Cross, and I don't think that he tattoos anymore.
I don't know. I don't think
there.
he does tattoo anymore. No.
Yeah, that was a big missed opportunity on my end. But before we go here, I want to touch on one last thing, which is this idea of collaboration, because you're a creative person. You're bringing this brand to life that's up in your head. You're doing it with these people that are incredible and valuable in your life, that are some of them mentors, some of them visionaries. And I see with brands, there's this point where the thing gets made, right? That it goes from an idea in the head and it becomes an item. Things get put behind that and there's growth and strategy. And then there's this point where they reach out to athletes or figures within the space that have the opportunity to help spread it, right? And you want people that align with the brand to be representing your brand. But I'm sure that there's some conflict at levels where like some people have tons of reach, right? And you could get your product into their hands. How do you make those decisions? How do you know who you want to collaborate with, who you want to work with, who you want to represent Parry out in the sport? And how do you like rope yourself back from reaching too far beyond that? Because it's such a fine line for like the brand equity that matters so much, is like who's living the brand for you.
Well, we can start with Dante, because Dante, like to me, is like the epitome of my brand in so many ways. And that relationship started like super organic. Like I just would chat with him about like, just interested in what his strength and conditioning split was and how did he balance it being an elite athlete and the amount of jiu-jitsu training he's doing, and kind of became friendly from there, sent him some gear. And I think he had a sponsorship at the time, and he said, it's up in like a couple of months, let's chat. I'll give you the first opportunity. So the relationship grew very organically, and, I was drawn to him. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Like my passions are weightlifting and jiu-jitsu. Like, is
Right.
there anybody else that like fits that more than him? I mean, it's just,
Hammer
and he just
Bahal.
looks like, he looks like, so like my wife is always like, he like everything he puts on, it looks like it's like made for him. Like,
Yeah.
so, you know, that was organic and sort of like very obvious. And then from there, like I just try to kind of see who I'm gravitating towards, like, you know, sponsoring Magid specifically for ADCC. And, you know, we do these sort of like, you know, one-off events and things like this. Like, you know, that dude's just fucking cool. That guy's got swagger. So I kind of let like for people like that, I kind of see like who do I really feel like has something to say that resonates with the brand. Even Margot Ciccarelli, like, you know, she just has like a unique outlook, you know, and is a great addition to the brand. So I really look at sort of like who fits the brand. Then maybe if you go like a lower tier, like up and coming, again, looking to see who fits the brand. And then there's also like an authenticity. Like, is this person actually like buying the gear before it's seeded? Do they really care, or are they just like spamming every single account? You know, who will pick up the phone and talk to me and then follow up and say, hey, it was great to meet you. Like, you know, there's got to be an authenticity and, you know, and hitting it off with somebody. I think that's the most important thing.
Have you noticed what is the correlation between athlete representation and brand growth? I feel like as someone not involved in a brand, as just a consumer of products and the big fan of jiu-jitsu, it seems like it's really hard to tell if athletes are helping the brand grow to the degree that they have like a followership or an audience. So is there a direct correlation to that, or does it not really matter? Is it part of more this like ethos thing? Like Magid, I totally get everything you're saying. Like from the unwillingness to wear rash guards, right? Just the t-shirts into the board shorts. It's a vibe. Like he has a whole, not only an aggressive style and a fucking juggernaut in terms of the sport, but he is very much a stylistic person within jiu-jitsu that makes total sense when I hear those two things together. So is there a correlation there?
The short answer is no. It's really crazy. Like, it's very hard to kind of tell who and how things are going to resonate. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people in our community think like, oh, maybe I, you know, throw a bunch of money or something at a notable person, and that's just going to like build my brand. Like,
right.
That's not necessarily the case. Like, you know, like I'd say like a Dante or a Magid, like they're lending a credit, you know, any association with my brand is lending this level of credibility due to like who they are within the community. Right. But then the reason I say it's very hard is I have athletes that have like 3,000 followers that their like discount code does better than anybody else's. So you just so like wild. It's so crazy. Like they're, you know, you just don't know who and how people resonate with their community. And yeah, there's no like rhyme or reason to it, you know, like it's super interesting, like what can work and resonate and what doesn't.
Do you have, are you managing a lot of outreach? Like, do you get a lot of people coming to you and you have to be like, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. Like, really appreciate your support, but it's not a really, like, how do you have that conversation, dude?
I would never want to be mean, but like I could start an Instagram account of just the DMs that I get. And like, I wish I had I mean, you know, I'm a white belt. I'm going to win ADCC. You're making a big mistake. Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean, literally I could, it's unbelievable. Like the confidence that people have. One young kid was like, for probably like a solid month and a half, was trying to broker like a deal for his homie. And he's like, a white belt, and he's like, seriously, you got to get on this kid's train. He's like, come on, when are we doing a collab? We got to do this. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's just, I literally could start an account. It's hysterical.
That blows my mind. I wonder if that's like a cast a big net, catch a couple fish kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that that's just their role and they're just being super aggressive with like every single brand, hoping that someone just gets like worn down and are like, okay, cool, we'll take a look at it? Or is that just like their aggressive style to try to like land partnerships or something? It's so strange to me.
Probably a little bit of both, but I'll go dig through some of my greatest hits and text them to you after this. I'll send them. I send them to like homies that don't even like train jiu-jitsu, like in my my like best friend text thread. It's called the Hot Boys. Like I'll just say they just like dying laughing. Like sometimes people will be like one word. It'll just be like sponsor me, and it's just like damn.
Dude. So on a similar line of questioning here with athletes and like their potential to help grow a brand, especially in a small sport like jiu-jitsu, where the big names have a large percentage of the total people that are involved in watching it. What does someone like Nick Wooster do to not the brand equity part makes total sense. Like in terms of his vision, his recognition, and his personality and style. But that's like someone outside of jiu-jitsu, in terms of their scale. So is that a risky play, or is that something that's like, oh damn, this is gonna be sick. We're so stoked. This is on point. We gotta launch this. We gotta do this.
That's a really good question. So that came about pretty organically. My brand manager had a relationship with him, and we had seeded him some gear very early on. Even when the brand
for working out, not even for like jiu-jitsu.
Yep, just seeded him gear, and he really liked the gear and wanted to do a collaboration. We had this sort of idea. We had done two collaborations with him. I think the first one was in 2020 or 2021, and then we did the most recent one. So the first one was super well received, like sold out really quickly. Brought us like an array, people from more just the strength and conditioning world, a little bit of notoriety in the fashion world. And then the second one, which I actually think was probably a better sort of collection and a really rad design, I'd say it probably fell a little bit flat, to be honest, because I'd say at that point the brand was a little bit more established within the jiu-jitsu community. So then maybe that collaboration seemed like, maybe a little bit like kind of out of left field.
Yeah. How do you handle those moments? I feel like as someone who's investing your time and creative energy and excitement, right? It's exciting when you do something like that. There's been so many points in my life where the things that I'm most excited, most hyped about, that can't wait for it to come out, it's like not the most well received. And then the things that are random, they're the ones that, they trend the best, they're shared the most, people reach out the most from them. And it's so confusing as a creator to be like, fuck, like what, how do you solve this problem when something like that happens, when it's not as received as the first one? How do you like fail forward in that instance?
Just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, like keep plugging away and keep coming up with the ideas. But it is funny because we were joking the other day that anytime we go like higher production value for us on like a rollout or a campaign, it's almost like inversely related. Like the more money we spend on like a video, the video like doesn't go as viral. And then like, I'll like crop together a video on my phone and splice, and it'll like do like way better than something that we spent all this money on. And it's funny because my brand manager Sam the other day was like, dude, just stop don't let me like spend money on this. Every time you just make these dumb videos on your phone, like they do better.
It's weird. It's also hard too when like algorithmically, if it's anything to do with algorithmic spreading, it's like such a dice roll, man. It's so hard to tell because you don't know what their business strategy is on their end that drives what algorithms do. It's very clear though that you can do high quality, incredible stuff and it gets no exposure, and you can do totally bootleg, janky, whatever stuff and it gets tons of exposure. And then you could do that same exact thing again in the future and it switches. So it's this like just a conundrum that's really hard to corral and really hard to make decisions off. So it's important to have. I think that's why those things like those athlete relationships can be so valuable, because those are constant, and those are people that are total staples in the industry that athletes look up to, that kids look up to, that are cool. They do jiu-jitsu in an awesome way. It's really cool to see, man.
Thank you.
Well, George, I want to say, thanks for coming on the show. It's been really cool to talk to someone who's creating and has created something. It's a rare to see someone in it who's as motivated and as excited, but also taking really calculated, cool steps to keep something real and not just have it blow out and be lame. It's because it's easy to do, you know?
Yeah, thank you. No,
But
it
I
is.
will-
Though. It
s-
is.
I will say I want to see, in my perfect world, there's a limited production Donnie Shankle rash guard that just in chalk says handwritten Shankle across it with the legend on the back. I'd buy them all. So I would just buy them all and give them out to people. So
Love it.
Yeah.
I'm working on we are working on a very notable strength and conditioning collaboration for next year that I think is going to be crazy. So,
well, you
I'll
heard
tell
it
you
here
about
first.
offline. Yes,
You heard it
I'll
here
tell
first.
you offline.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, George. I really appreciate it, man.
Cheers. It was a pleasure.
Yep.